Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time you're watching the video. It's Sid. I'm back, Sid from Sid Sticks. I got another good one today. Another 2-1-8er from my hometown. This gentleman played in the 69 state high school tournament. Went on to play college hockey, a year of college over at Bemidji State, where they were actually a national champion. NAIA back in the day under the legendary R.A. Peters, Coach Peters. And then he went and had several years in the minors and had a cup of coffee, as I like to say. But hey, anytime you can play in the NHL, that's quite an accomplishment. He played 4 games with the Leafs, but we're going to talk about the career played in the minors. There's some pretty good players. Now we'll have some stories there, I'm sure, as well as post career. We went on to own a business here in town of Roseau with business partner Earl Anderson. Also played a little bit hockey back in the day. And we might even talk a little bit about some fun times I had against them battling with. I played a little fast pitch back in the day in the old Roseau League. Smo was a pitcher. I'm very pleased to bring in Dale Smedsmo from Roseau, Minnesota here. Dale, let's get you in here and see if we can get your face in here. Let's get you in here. It's great to see you.
Good afternoon.
Well, I'm trying to talk to you here. What I usually do when I do these interviews is I go back and talk about where it all started, in the town, whatever town it may be. And I think I'm going to pull up a picture here, the old Roseau Memorial Arena, this rink right here, where you started. Can you talk about playing when you were a young boy, as a youth? Maybe some influence before you got to high school, playing in that rink right there. What got you started in hockey, and who were some of the coaches or people that really influenced you within the game?
Well, we used to have Saturday morning league run by Art Self-Paca, and then we had Thursday night league when we got into sixth grade, where we had Norm Pastor and that, and played Bantams, and we didn't have Pee-wees for squirts at that time. We went to Bantams, and then in high school after that, I was on the high school team as a sophomore. And I didn't play in high school again until my senior year, January 8th. I only played 8 high school games and played in the state tournament. And I had a full ride at the University of Minnesota and decided not to go there. Ended up playing at your Peters.
Okay. Let's do this. Let me pull up that picture of that team you played on. I think I got a picture back in the high school because I was a pretty good little squad, even though you didn't come home with a trophy. I think you went to the third place game and you got beaten that one. But hey, there's a hell of a lot of other teams across the state of Minnesota would love to be there where you were. And let's see this team here. Let's talk about some of those guys there. I think there you are to the left there, number 13. That's you, right? And then you got who's the goaltenders there? Is that Kavarnloff?
That was Michael Kavarnloff.
Some other players on there. Who else did you got? I'm looking at the roster there. You probably remember more than me, but some of those guys.
Well, it was Robbie Harris, Senator Earl, and I. And then Daryl Foss was our checker. He took care of Henry when we played Warroad every time. We played Warroad 4 times that year. They beat us twice, and we beat them twice. Unfortunately, beat us to go in the championship game at the state tournament. We scored 8 goals against them. They scored 8 against us. It was quite a year.
Yeah, you beat me to the punch on that. I was going to ask you about that because
I beat them out in the regions.
that was then. Did they still have back doors? Is that why you?
And then Henry and the boys went and played in Hibbing, and I can't remember who they beat out, but they won in overtime. Henry scored the winning goal, or like there's something in the state tournament.
Okay. Now that whole deal. I mean, I remember.
That would have been for region.
I was just, I think I was 3 years old, just born, but during that whole time, obviously the big story was during that tournament, the evil Edina squad, they lost the championship, but that was the year you got hurt, if I recall, correct?
Right. Yep.
Uh, yeah, I still made impression, but also in that tournament, I think you probably played with this guy at some point in the WHA. Was Mike Antonovich in that tournament as well? I believe. I think for Green, I think.
Yep. Mike was there. Bill Butters. There was a lot of guys, a lot of good hockey players. There was 6 of us that had full rides at the U. Henry, myself, Dean Blaze, Mike Antonovich, Bill Butters, and the defenseman that hit Henry in the state tournament, Knudsen from Edina.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure he was the evil enemy there after that.
But I mean, everybody was kind of not headhunting, but looking at Henry because he was the star of the show.
Sure, sure. That's take him on, not take him on. I'm sure. I don't know the hit. I don't remember. There's still footage of these games back in the '60s and '70s. How the hit happened, but it happens, right? But on that same squad, then I know Earl was on that team, and also I think Harris. They both were, I think, if I remember right, all
John and Robbie.
Yeah, yeah. If I remember.
No,
Minnesota hockey. Sometimes that interweb can be incorrect. I'm an internet junkie, folks, but by golly, sometimes I miss them.
well, I don't know. I just
Yeah,
anyway.
I just know that you had some good players in that tournament, as a lot of these tournaments you want to play with.
Yeah, John centered Mike Broughton and Daryl Foss. That was a good line.
Sounds like after that, going back when I was in the '70s, sounds like a Roseau Leaf line in there too. So, but let's talk about. You went from there. You went over to Bemidji, and I wanted to bring up. I'm going to see if I got a picture from that. That was the '70-'71 squad, if I remember right. Is that
Right.
this team here? Now let's get that bigger. So, looking at this, you're in there. That's Blaine Comstock, yourself up there above, right above. I think RH.
Yeah.
And then Bruce Falk in the front row.
Yep.
Yep.
Fall.
I think those are the three Roseau guys. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
And I know I got this pretty small print down here looking at the names, but Charlie Brown was on that squad too again. I mean,
Charlie Brown, Jim
McNamara.
Jude Bouillon, Dennis Lemieux. We had a lot of good players.
I think they were 7-1. I think.
Yeah.
Not a bad, not a bad year. And came over with and at that time they had NAIA championships and then also the NCAA, but that was the NAIA. So he played the 1 year there. I think they won. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think they won 3 years in a row at Bemidji State.
That was the last year. Next year they didn't win.
Okay. So some hell of a team. So after that, then playing there, and we talked about some of those names. And as far as pro and minor pro, you started off. I think was it with?
He was drafted by the Toronto Maple.
Yes. So the Leafs. Now, any accomplishment, I don't care if it's 1 game or 100 game or 1,000 games, to say you played in the NHL, that is quite an accomplishment. I see that picture. I think I got that card. Look at that card right there. Yeah.
Young stud at that.
Leafs. And then we look at the back there. That's it. Dale Smedsmo, 4 games and more Bemidji. It says, yep. And all the stats and play varsity hockey at Bemidji State. So anytime you get a hockey card after, that's an accomplishment in my opinion. I can buy one now if I go make one on the internet. Say, so 4 games there, and I look at the list of teams you played with in the minors. There's some pretty good players over the course of time, and some characters too. We'll get into that. But so from the Leafs, I think you were at Tulsa.
I was on a contract with Toronto.
Okay.
One thing about going back to when I got called up was my first year. I was 2 months into my professional career and got called up to the Leafs and didn't have a clue pro hockey up there. I just gotten into the minors to try it there. But anyway, I played in the 5th game, was the Saturday afternoon game or Sunday afternoon game against Montreal Canadiens. Well, there was 3 of us that never touched the ice, myself and 2 players on the Canadiens. We'd skate around between periods. BS. Well, you could BS with one. It was Guy Lafleur and Steve Shutt. They went on to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Well, Lafleur didn't speak English, so I couldn't BS with him. Shutt and I would sit and BS and stuff. But yeah, we didn't touch on that. And that was Ken Dryden had like 35 saves that night, and they beat us 1-0. Something like that. It was a hell of a game.
Yeah, he was a phenomenal. That's why I became a goalie as a kid. Because up here you only get a few channels, right? And I got Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday night to watch it. And
Dryden was a little bigger than you.
Yeah, that's probably nowadays, goalies are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". They're huge.
Drafted one at 6'7".
Yeah, I can't imagine. Just because he's that big or looks the possession doesn't mean he plays the possession. You saw what happened in
They don't have to be as quick as you little guys.
That's true. That's a good point. Very good point when we're talking about playing the position. Well, you look at this last year. Badgers playing Denver, both their goalies were very big guys. Just played position well, but the sad fact is, the smaller guy is probably not going to play in the NHL. That's just the way it is. But
I think it's changing a little bit. I mean, in the old days, there used to be a lot of Antonovich, just talking about Minnesota kids and Neil and Brian. They weren't big in size and stature, and they all played there. And I think the game's come back to that a lot because it's all about speed.
yeah. Well, look at the Montreal Canadiens now. Kid called Cole Caulfield. All he does is score, right? It's the first 50 goal scorer they had since 50 years over in Montreal. So, I think if you can put the biscuit in the basket, you're going to find a position in the NHL. Not like the old days where if you weren't the goal scorer, you could rough it up a bit. Those are
you had to do. You didn't have much of a choice.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that,
intimidation was a big part of the game in those days.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I was going to look at some of these teams you played with. I saw some players, looking at when you were with the Tulsa team in Oklahoma City too. They were affiliated with. Weren't they affiliated with Toronto? Because I looked on there, and I don't know. You played how many games was it? I don't remember. 20 games there in Oklahoma City, but I saw Tiger Williams was on that squad.
Tiger was there for just a little bit.
Okay. But you were able to play with him then?
Oh, I knew Tiger real well.
Yeah. That guy, he's a legend in his own right as far as penalty minutes there. So, but he had some guys, and I also saw. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how he played the picture for a couple of players, but was it Eddie Shack too?
Shack was with the big club.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was up there, he was there. He was in training camp, and now that is a true character.
I was going to say, didn't they say clear the track? Here's Eddie Shack.
In the dressing room, is hilarious. It never was a dull moment when Eddie was around. I happened dressed in the same room in training camp with him and stuff, and he was a riot. He was really a riot.
Well, there's a cast of characters in the '70s, and you played with a few, and I think a few of them might have been in even the Slapshot movie, if I remember looking at some of the rosters.
Well, yeah, a lot of them were.
I know I looked at, I can't remember if it was Antone or who it was I talked to, but yeah, I think it was the goaltender Ronnie Dokken. I think you played with him at some point. Yeah, he was in Slapshot. He wasn't Denny Lemieux when he's speaking.
No, he had you could see him in there in a couple roles, but the Hanson brothers, all three of them, Jeff was a roommate of mine.
Okay.
And Jack and I were real good friends, Jack Carlson. And
Steve played on there too. I see one of those teams I'm looking at. I think Steve.
For a little while, and then he went up. I don't know how much he played with them in Johnstown there. I have no idea.
Okay.
But Steve ended up going up to the LA team.
Okay. Yeah, I saw some video of him back, and that's a guy I'd like to pin down. But these guys are tough to connect with. But a few other names too. I like that. Locally, Al Hankslavin, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, post career, about some past pitch battles because those are some good ones between you and Al Hankslavin. We'll that for later. But I looked at when you were in WHA with them. It was, I think, some of these guys. Judy Keon played with him too.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Hall of Famer and probably one of the guys I want to.
Well, I actually played on a line with Keon and Ellis when I went up.
Okay.
And then I played with them again. Well, in New England with Alan Hankslavin.
I'm going to show a couple. I don't know how blurry they are, but I'm going to show a few team pictures. See if you remember these. I think we got one here. This is from. It's kind of rough to see. It's kind of small, but that's Cincinnati. It's a top small one.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty big, but that was a great name.
Yeah.
Them for a while. And then this one I think is a little later in career there. This one is a little bit easier to read, but some of the Rustlers, yeah. Tell me about that squad because I look at that, some of the names. I see a name on there that you're sitting next to. I hear quite a few stories about this Willie Trognuts.
Yeah, he was a character. Yeah, we had quite a few characters on that team. That was kind of we were all on our last heydays and deciding if we wanted to keep playing or go into something different.
I looked at, was that the PHL that year?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for those of you that don't know, Smo, actually, I think when I pulled up the stats for Smo, he was number, I'm going to pull up the page I got right behind. Number 8 all-time leading the PHL Senior Hockey League out there with 87 points in 97 games. Not just under a point a game. He also had 322 PIMs, so hey, if risks are getting so scored from scoring so many points, right? So that's interesting. And then trying to look over here, I got that, I was pulling more pictures, but I wanted to pull up some of these guys. I mentioned Tiger, and we talked about Chet, but this guy, did you play with Kirk Brackford, play with the Saints?
Teammates. We played under John Brophy, who
Oh my
later
goodness.
was coach at Toronto Maple Leafs.
I got to hear some Brophy stories.
Oh, we had some fun. Yeah. We'd be Kurt and I would take turns working out on the heavy bag, and Brophy ran the heavy bag, held it for us. If we got a little slack, he'd turn around and slap us in the face. Come on. He'd have certain little words for us that I can't say now. But anyway, he'd make us get mad and go again. He was a heck of a coach. He was a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
You say he was definitely old school.
Definitely old school. He played in the old Eastern League and had 62 fights in 16 games.
Well, I think he probably even fought as a coach too, if I hear it.
Oh, yeah.
I know I saw something on one of the podcasts that said,
If you got hurt, you didn't lay on the ice. He'd come out there and kick you, get up.
I know he liked the tough guys because I remember I can't pronounce his name. Kanapka, his name is. I think he played in the minors when he was coaching, and Kanapka was talking about how he had just a terrible game. He was like a -4, so but he got into a fight, and so he's, oh, good game. You had a great game out there, and he's thinking, what? I get penalties and that, and I'm minus. And he goes, why am I going to fight? So I guess that's my role here. So he liked the tough guys.
He was a great coach. He was fun.
So yeah, I'm gonna, I mentioned him, and you mentioned Butters, Billy Butters, and um, I got to pull up the picture because this is when you're with it. I think this is the Whalers picture.
Yep.
Yeah, that there looks intimidating. You got the good Fu Manchu going. I'm trying here, small. I'm a little weak with my.
We beat the Russians 2-1.
What I got? Speaking of
That was my highlight of being a.
speaking of that, I got a 30-second clip that you. I don't know if you scored the goal, but you're
No, I didn't.
okay, right there. So let's just watch this here.
And Alexandrov shoots to center. Doug Roberts. Luchenko, kept in by Doug Roberts, puts it up. And the Whalers have taken the lead by a score of 1-0.
Number 20, New England.
So what they did there, Smo, is that they highlighted you, thinking you scored. Number 20 scored the goal. Who was 20? Who was that? Who was that?
I don't even know. He tipped it.
But you're right in
He
front.
tipped it and it hit his stick and went in.
And they're highlighting you. So and by the way, for those of you who don't know, if you watch that clip, who was the goaltender that happened to be that net for the Russians that day?
Good one.
That was Vladislav Tretiak, one of my idols as a kid too. I never got a chance to go to his camp there. He had one of the DL, but yeah, that been quite an experience. You ended up winning that game, or did you did?
The only one, I think they played 9 games against World Hockey in NHL, and that was the only game they lost. Of course, we got them off the airplane.
Oh, we're not talking bus legs. We're talking plane legs.
Yeah, they had a play, but yeah, we beat them that night, and they went on to win the rest of them.
That's pretty cool. That's something to remember. That's for sure. And I think that I pushed up that Cincinnati picture, but I was going to say on Cincinnati, there's a character. He's not a character, but he was struggling with now some help. But was Barry Melrose on that squad with you? I don't know.
Barry Melrose was on Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean that's what I meant when he played with Cincinnati. My fault. I don't know if I said.
I'll tell you a funny story about when we played the Russians.
Well, that's it. That's what we're here
So I
for.
got knocked down behind the net. Defenseman and I went into the back of the or forward, and I went and I knocked him down. We were laying on the ice, and I think it was Fetich.
One of the OVs. And
Yeah, he shot, and the puck went right through the heading. And I saw it plain as day, but the Russian, I had his head down, and I was on top of him, and it went through, and I looked up at Bill Friday, and I saw Bill Friday wave it off. I got up, and I skated by Bill and went back to the bench, and I said, Bill, You saw that as well as I did. He looked at me and says, I hate him especially.
So you had the home field ice advantage there.
I would have tied it up, but that was, yeah. And then some.
They were the best team in the world. That was before
They were good. They were really good.
Yeah, some interesting stories about watching the documentary.
We played the Czechs that year too. We played them right afterwards in Hartford, and they were good too. They were good too, and I think they beat us.
Well, the Russians, they had the best goalie in the world, and you guys were able to beat him. That's something that feather in the back of the hat there. And saying he beat Tretiak. Not too many people did that, so but that's pretty cool. Talking about that and that story about that because I did hear something about that, and you just confirmed it for me. Now, like I said, you're at Whalers. You're with the Toronto Maple Leaf squad, the minors there. Um, what kind of experiences can you talk about? I mean, you got to have some stories. I remember one time I was at state tournament when you were refereeing. You talked about I don't know if this camping saw some guy in it. Maybe this is memory escapes me, but some guy on the beach kicking a palm tree or something. Was that? Okay, yeah, let folks listen to this story. It's true. I tell to this day. I tell this one.
Going to training camp at San Diego Golf in the Western League. I get to San Diego and we come up on the beach there where the hotel is, and there's a guy out there. He's kicking a freaking palm tree. But I go out there and I go, "Holy, what the hell are you doing?" I gotta toughen up my legs. And I go, "Holy guy, that's unbelievable." That was cool for he was a character.
Palm tree. Never.
Oh, yeah. He had one of them white suits on with a. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, because I think he was into that. Because
Yeah.
I remember Lefty talking about when he met him.
Karate and judo.
He didn't have his nunchucks with him, did he? That's a whole different topic. Another time that Lefty talked about first time he met him with the nunchucks. So yeah, I had to bring that story up. So that's one I definitely wanted you to talk about.
In the old days, we used to always tie our uniforms down and back.
Yeah, sure.
I get in a fight with Goldie, and so comes up, and Goldie's he's shorter, and so I grabbed his jersey in the front, pulled it up over the front of his head. So I got him there, and he's going, "Oh, that's cheating! Oh, that's cheating!"
Well, you're supposed to fight. Sometimes you don't fight fair, right? You just want to win the battle.
That was cool. He was that type of guy. You'd fight him on the ice, and afterwards, he was your best friend.
Well, I think that's the case in hockey in general.
Oh,
It is. I remember some of those Leaf days that I saw some battles there with the old Taconite.
Yeah.
Remember the days. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But so yeah, so those and you must have some others. You mentioned Brophy, and you got to have a Brophy story for me, though, don't you?
Oh yeah, Brophy. He always told us if you get hurt, don't be late on the ice because if you do, he'd come out there and he'd look at you, and if you weren't bleeding or whatever, he'd kick you, get up. And I've seen him do it more than once, but yeah, he was quite a character. Brophy was a great guy. Great guy.
I can imagine. You talk about old school. Nowadays, you get put in prison for some of the stuff that these guys do.
I tell a lot of stories, but I don't think they're very.
Well, you can take and kind of paraphrase them.
It's not the wording; it's what was done.
What was done? Yeah, okay. I heard some, and I read his book too. So trust me, I know there's quite some interesting stories about Bro. He had the white hair, if I remember right, didn't he?
Hair white.
Right. So I don't have any hair, so I mean, I was envious of that. It's like a catcher's mitt. That's a good one. So I mean, before we get into talking about post career and playing with Leafs and that and refereeing and stuff. So is there anything that sticks out? Because I don't, can you tell me some of the stories that maybe you've been meaning to talk to somebody about that you haven't talked about? Can you bring up something that maybe you're hiding in the old hip pocket that folks want to hear? I like to hear the dirt. Come on, let's hear something good here, Skull.
I'll tell you one story about Bill Butters.
Okay.
It was in fact, Bill and I were supposed to be roommates at the University of Minnesota.
Okay.
One of us would probably end up in prison. Anyway, so we're playing. That's when Oklahoma City and Tulsa were both franchises.
Okay.
Toronto were both in their system being paid by it. So we're playing in Tulsa, and I'm coming off the ice after a shift. And that's jumps me. Not the best of me. So 2 nights later, we play in Oklahoma City, and I told everybody on my team in the dressing room, You throw the puck in the butter's corner, make him work hard, and when he's coming off, I said, somebody come into the bench because I am going to pay him back.
Retribution, right?
So it worked out well.
Yeah, I heard he was a wild and willy one when he played. No, he's kind of the opposite, but yeah, he's a tough one. Now, I got a guy I got to ask you about because I guess I mentioned Charlie Brown, but I skated with a guy over in White Bear Lake and No Check. I played gold in a lot of different leagues, but his name was George Clausen. Remember that name at all? He played in the minors for quite a few years. He was a tough guy and then played with, I think, in the wing system. Does that ring a bell at all?
No, see, they were in the AHL, and that was their top farm team.
Okay.
And we were in the CHL, which was the top farm team of Chicago. Well, would have been Chicago, Toronto, New York. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It was the six teams, but yeah.
I will say this: when I played with George, he said, Sid, I got my best advice from a goaltender one time. The goalie was George Eddie Jockman. He said, kid, because he was young, Eddie was getting old. He goes, kid, you listen to me. I'll be the eyes in the back of your head. He goes, Sid, that's the best advice I ever got from a goalie. Because you guys are goofy, but that was the best advice I ever got. It's true. We are the third defenseman back there. We got to talk. So, and seeing a few things back there I probably shouldn't talk about either in some of these games I played with. But so career you played minors and that kind of on down. And how do you end up saying this is enough of playing pro? And you just say the rest of the house it's time to take and get.
Well, you look across and the young guys are looking at you to make their mark, and you go, "Shit, I don't need this."
Yeah, it's kind of what I hear a lot. At times I see that. I think I heard that from Uncle's Nyland in his podcast. When it was time, he goes, "Yeah, this guy's going after big guy." It's like Probert. Everybody wanted to get him in the tail end,
Right.
tail end. So,
Right.
so
It's only smart on their
yeah. I mean,
you got to be. It's all a frame of mind, and the more you do it, the better you're at it, and the more equipped with it. It's a lot of big parts, man.
yeah. Now, how were the hands after that? Did you have any
No,
these guys that you're kind of
shot.
is that stuck? Okay, that tested it. Tough game, yeah.
I didn't have big hands. I wish I had the hands of some of these farm boys around here.
So afterwards, you come back to Roseau. Tell me about how you got into business. I was sitting in the shop up, the D&E, which stood for Dale and Earl. How did that come about after post hockey?
Fisher, who owned Dean's Sporting Shop here in Roseau, was good friends of mine. And so he was wanting to get out of it. So Earl and I have been partners and best friends all our lives. And so we decided to go into it. Earl had retired a year before I did. And he'd been working at Flair, so we jumped into this business. And then after about 10 years, I bought him out. He went on to his other work, and I stayed here at D&E for 37 years.
It's quite an accomplishment, and you sold it off, and it's still here to this day. I'm sitting at the desk that he was probably sat at for many years at his desk. And speaking of that, Dale, you talked about Earl. Let's talk a little about some of the summer months activities in town. We used to have a fast pitch league. I got to bring this up, folks. There was a fast pitch league, and some of these guys are former pros or college players. And let me tell you, as a kid watching these games, my buddy Troy Square said he look at the schedule on Thursday night to find out when you played Alan Hanks later.
Well, Hank and I were both pitchers, and we were both a little wild and probably a little ornery on the side. We'd throw at your head. It didn't bother us at all. And we went back and forth and battled back and forth. Actually, Aaron Broughton and all the guys that played professional hockey from Roseau came back and played in that league, and we loved it. It was more fun and very competitive. We had great pitchers: Carson Hedlund, Carter Hedlund, Bobby Lund. Alan Hanks, Slavin. We had a couple pitchers out of Sprague up there, the Pebbles. So it got to be really competitive, and it kept us going.
No, I remember they put together All-Star. There was a guy up here because there's no fast pitch around. It's all of it.
Oh, yeah, Marty Brown was from Williams.
He was one of the top guys.
Yeah, he was.
Did you have some battles with him?
Oh, yeah, we played. Marty was at the end of his
Yeah,
career, you know, but he was renowned. He there was more fast pitch up in Canada, in Ontario up there, and he got paid quite well to go up there. He was good.
It's funny you say that because I took my daughter to a world tournament in Eau Claire some years ago. I got to talking to this New Zealander. So how in the heck do you end up playing for a team in Wausau or whatever it was in Wisconsin, coming from New Zealand? He goes, well, first of all, they fly us up here. Second of all, they give us a house to live in. Third of all, I got a car to drive. And I got a job, well, kind of a job. And then I get to play ball. It's our off season. So and there you go.
We used to play some tournaments on weekends, and we represented Polaris, and we'd go to Thief River and play Arctic Cat. You don't think those were some bad?
Oh, I bet. Yeah,
No, it was a lot of fun.
those are the good old days. Now there's no players around here and the fields are gone, but it's some good memories. But I had to bring that up because as a kid, I loved watching. And then eventually got to play in some of those teams. And you mentioned Aaron Broughton. I tell you what, CNC.
Just when he ran for a ball,
Oh,
it was just smooth as silk.
amazing. So we're in the shop here, so it's going to ring. But you also played a little bit, and again, when I was a kid, again, I got to talk about some of the Roseau Leaf days. You played a little bit there. Let's talk about that. How many years did you play with the Leafs?
Oh, probably 6.
Yeah. You know, the thing about small guys, when I was watching them play, I never seen them take a slap shot. Never had to, because that snapshot you had, that's pretty dangerous. You could bring it. And, you know, they had the national tournament here a few times. And I remember there was a guy from, I can't remember if it was with the Bucks or with the Parkers or what, but Wong, remember that name, Wong? I think you guys, you know, since they both play pro, I don't think you guys ever dropped the mitts in that team.
Yeah. The most fun was playing old timers no chip.
Okay.
And we had a Roseau team that we'd go to the national tournament down in Florida, and we won it 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
And we go to Winnipeg and play, and we won out there all the time. We had a lot of good players from this little community, and it was a lot of fun.
I heard people talking about that. Is that the same tournament that, who was it? Former Michigan coach, Berenson. Didn't he used to put a team on?
Yeah.
You guys kind of go against him?
And we're represented out of Detroit.
Okay. There's some good hockey around this neck of the woods and around the nation. And then, you know, people got tired of beating each other up playing amateur. There's no,
Charlie Brown would come play with us.
okay.
Pick up a few guys like that.
That's some good hockey.
We had an awesome defense with Donnie Ross, Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
You get better.
You know, you throw these names around, folks. You know, people that don't know. We talked Donnie Ross, a two-time all. You know, you represented America. Olympic,
Many times gold medal or not on a medal team.
yeah, or national team, and
Yeah.
Charlie Brown as well.
Olympic team.
Okay, McNamara. I mean, you played. That's the thing about the '70s and the '80s. There's a lot of good hockey players. That's why I do this sort of thing, interviewing people, is to tell the story. And you know, the people in the younger generation don't know who some of these guys are. There's just so many around the area that play with. Like when you were up Bemidji, you had Blaine Comstock and Bruce Falk and some of these other guys. And they're all on the for the represent the red, white, and blue.
Right?
Did you? I think you played a national team, didn't you?
Yeah. 72. I got separated my shoulder. I was flying and play a college game, and then I was going to get to Madison Square Garden and play the Russians on Sunday afternoon. I separated my shoulder and never made it back.
Oh, geez. 72, I think that was the year that Lefty Curran played.
Yep, they won the silver medal.
Folks, if you don't
It was the
know
Borough.
look that up. That's probably the best goaltending effort I've ever heard of. I watched the replay.
Mark Hall took my place on that team.
I recalled it. Okay. Yeah, to give a silver medal, it's kind of a forgotten team, those guys. So, yeah, I mean, you were Brady. You played with him in camp and stuff, the national team a little bit?
Yeah.
So,
Training camp and exhibition games.
so you mentioned Mark Hall, but who were some of the other players that people might remember the last name or the name besides the Hall name? Everybody remembers the
Had
Hall.
Lefty and had Gambucci and God, I can't remember them all.
Laundry listed hockey names.
Charlie Brown was on it, McElmurray.
You know, I kind of like that.
Frank Sanders.
There's a lot of good names. I'm kind of all over the place at times, folks, but you mentioned, I forgot about the Whalers. At the time, the Whalers, wasn't Gordie Howe playing for the Whalers? Was he there? He was not. I son of it. Okay.
It was in Houston.
Okay. I'm sorry. I wanted to hear a story or two as you played with him, but he got to play with one of his sons. So
When we went into the National Hockey League, then Gordy, they didn't take in Houston, so Gordy and his sons.
okay.
But I got to be good friends with Gordy, and every time we play him, I would go to their house for a meal now and then in Houston, and got through Mark taking my spot on that team, and Gordy and I said talk hockey because I played against him numerous times. And
So tell me about.
I'll tell you a funny story on that. So we're in Houston, and Rick Dudley.
Yeah, I had that name written down, so I'm glad you mentioned his name.
Rick Dudley and I were roommates, and we got into a little scrabble just for the hell of it to warm up before the game. Popped the contact lens off my eye. The team at that time was kind of frugal, so they'd only pay for my contacts if I lost them in a fight. So anyway, we're going to do back and forth to warm up, before the game. And so Dutch runs into me, and I pop one out, and we're on the ice looking for it. And Gordy comes over, and he goes, "Smoke, what's the deal?" I said, "Lost contact." Oh, he says, "Let me take care of it." So he goes and gets one of the arena guys to come out. There was a scoop shovel. They take all the snow around it, put it in a pail, and he says, "We'll take it in, melt it. I'll get you your contact." I didn't have the heart to tell him I lost it in the hotel room, not on the ice, So anyway, we're skating around for the first period after warm-ups, and they clean the ice. He comes up to me and goes, "Smoke, we melted down. We can't find it in there. Sorry about that." Skates away. Dudley and I, and we kept that story.
Your mind. The team did pay for your contacts.
They did that.
Okay. Yeah, contact.
It isn't like today where those boys get pampered and
and the money they make. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, yeah, you had to really appreciate and love the game to play back in the day when you played. But you went. Here's some stories, and that's why I wanted to sit down with you, talk a little about some of these stories. So you mentioned that one. Are there any other things before we can kind of go post career game that you'd like to talk? I want to hear some of these that you can at least talk about or paraphrase. I love the Goldthorpe one because I kind of tell that, and then I finally got to hear it from the source yourself. So that's true when I tell people that. You got proof of it here. There's got to be another one or two in there.
There's so many numerous ones, and I mean that's part of what hockey is. It wasn't fun all the time, but it was an experience. It's something you remember the rest of your life. You talk about hockey and being involved in sports. To me, I had almost had more fun refereeing than I did playing the game. And granted, I'm older. I've gone through it, so I appreciate it. But, working with the young kids, Earl and I did a lot of games. We did Roseau Ram games all the time, and I always talk to the players. If they were going into a corner, I'd go, "No, you don't need to do that." And it was fun, and I really actually enjoyed it. And high school hockey in Minnesota it's renowned. And
So how many? Okay, because I was going to get you beat me to the punch on that. How many years did you referee in high school hockey?
about 10. There were about 6 or 7 state tournaments.
That was my next question.
One championship game.
How was that? Do you remember this championship game? Who it was?
No, I don't.
Do you have any experiences or remembrance of the tournaments? I mean, just being there.
Yeah, we did a 3 overtime game.
Okay.
Got over after midnight. But no, it was a lot of good memories, good stuff. We had a good repping crew here in Roseau. Carson Hamlin headed it up, and he did a heck of a job with it. Keith Marshall.
Well, I just interviewed Bob Paris. Doc was a referee as well, wasn't he?
Doc was, yeah.
Amazing. So So refereeing and owning the shop, and we talked a bit about the fast pitch days and that, and the battles there. And he played on. I talk about the Leafs too, because I look at the Leafs team and I look at those guys when they had the national tournament, and I mentioned Wong. There were some really damn good hockey players that their post career come back and play senior amateurs.
Oh,
Here as well as other cities, and they don't have.
the world had the Lakers. They had a lot of good players.
Oh yeah, and they playing for the up in the Cash League and the Amateur Cup and the Allen Cup and that, but you guys never did compete against them. Why was that? Was there also back in the way back in the 50s and 40s and 50s? I think they played in the Clover Leafs, 70s, and they never did compete. I don't know what the story was behind that, folks, but there would have been some value, and I'm sure it would have been a full house if you didn't play, because there was still the I'd say animosity. There's always that rivalry. You want to beat war, no matter if it's high school or youth or anything that we played against them over there. But that's what I was curious about them days. So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. You had the D&E and you had partner with. So there's a young man now. He's retired too. I got to pull up his picture. Most people know his Big Buff, but can you talk about this young man here? He's not so young anymore, but to you and I, he's young. How did because you were more or less a mentor to him, kind of helped him out to where he's at and where he ended up.
Yeah, Dustin. The only thing I ever told him about his hockey playing is don't be a fighter. You've got hands. You don't want to hurt those hands. They're too good. He was.
Yes.
He didn't have to. He was so big and strong. And,
Yep.
And it was, yeah. And everything he did came natural. He just was a natural-born hockey player. Had the sense. Whatever. Had a lot of good times in Chicago with him, and yeah.
That Stanley Cup party here was a pretty good one, if I remember right.
Oh, yeah.
About the landing and stuff.
Yeah, I was there for that. So remember,
Yeah, his mother and I did a lot of traveling, watching them. It was fun.
yeah. So that just kind of reminds me of when you showed me your hands, right? You talked about towards the end of the career, and I know being that big of a guy, and you did have a little rough and tumble once in a while, and the body kind of starts breaking down.
Oh,
I really didn't play at a high level as a goalie. I got 2 new hips, my knees, hockey and the memories and the relationships you have. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's a family, You can go state tournament. That's why it's wonderful going to state tournament. It's like go home. You see people you met 50 years ago or whatever you played against. That's the game of hockey. That's why I like doing this, is talking about the stories in the family.
Cheryl and I always like sitting in just the regular seats and listening to the fans. Dustin was always the one they disliked the most, So we're in Nashville for the playoffs. And that was the game that he grabbed.
Yeah, that's
any chance. So anyway, there's a young group in front of us. And when I say young, they're in there.
Sure.
Ron Dustin's just on and continuously. Hall Raymond going on, and Cheryl and I sitting behind, we're laughing along with it. And between the first and second period, they get up and the guys go to the bathroom or get beers or whatever, and this one young lady says to me, "You've got different accent." She says, "Where are you from?" I said, "Northern Minnesota." And she said, "What are you doing here?" Well, I said, "My stepson plays hockey." "Well, who is he?" And I said, "Dustin Bufflin." And she almost went white.
Because they were bad mouthing, ribbing him the whole game, and they're like, "Oh no!"
And we go, "We love it.
Yeah,
We think it's great. We sit and listen. We do this in every rink," I said, "we go to." And I mean, he's focused. That means he's doing something. When you were recognized on the ice, that means you're doing something. And I said, I played, and I was never the most
like
the best player, but I got voted like most popular player on my team in Cincinnati twice, and in the minors a couple times, because it was just they know you're there, and that's how Dustin was. I mean, he's bigger in life. It was highlight to watch. He was that.
yeah, and and the thing about him, and you kind of relate, but not relate. my grandmother raised me, and grandpa was really, really influential on him, and that's what I really respect and appreciate. And like I said, kind of relate because, yeah, without, grandpa Kenny or my grandmother, I would never played. I would play the game. They did so much family. That's why I talk about family. And when he came back with the cup, and they did that thing in town years ago. They won the cup, and he was very emotional. So it just showed that big guys can be emotional. It's just, and he's kind of a big cream puff too when you get down to. Now he's on to family stuff after hockey and probably out fishing someplace today, I bet.
I still tell him the only guy he's ever been scared of was me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're told, but
No,
no.
I just said he knew I ruled the roost.
Yeah. Well, I've tried to keep this under an hour or so for people, but like I said, I wanted to talk about, growing up in Roseau, playing in the tournament, experience of that. Many kids don't ever get a chance to do that. What are your thoughts? I mean, this is a whole kind of off topic, but I always like to get the feedback of people that played different years and eras. The game of high school hockey now in Minnesota, or just the game in general, the game of hockey. What do you think now compared to back in the day? I mean, the equipment's gotten crazy, and the kids are not, they're all your size now. It seems like some of them
They're
are
big.
big.
The thing about hockey now, it's gotten to be a year-round thing. I think, we had, in my era, 1969, we probably had one of the best hockey players to ever come out of the North up here.
Yeah.
And Oshie would be right there, is Henry Boucher. I mean, his career was cut short. But we played against each other in baseball, football, and we even ran track.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's just one sport. They play it 12 months out of the year. And granted, if you're really good and you really love it, it's good.
Yeah.
But the ones that aren't as good probably fall off to the side and don't get a chance to excel. And it's a money game also. It's a lot of money involved to stay in it. But we played it and we got to know how to play all four sports or three sports, whatever you wanted to play or two. And it was different. And in high school, it's all about the comradeship.
And that's another good point. You see kids leaving early, and I don't know what's going to happen with the change of the rule. The NCAA's got this 5-and-5.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see what happens with it, but I think it's going to affect some teams and some players. But you never get those high school years back.
No.
See some of these kids that do, like Aaron Ness, who stuck around. He was a hell of a hockey player back in the day, Mr. Hockey and won a championship. And yeah, now it's just jumping ship and NIL and all this things small that you never had when you played. And,
If you're real good, you're almost forced that you got to move on, which is good because better competition.
of course,
It does. But, it's in the old days, the community kind of sponsored us and bantams and everything. And then they get to see the product when it was in its senior year or whatever.
mm-hmm.
And now, you can't blame the kids for jumping ship and going to teams if it excels and they do better. So it's a tough one. It is. It's no right or wrong in it, really.
Talking about playing other sports, the rivalry between war and playing other sports and that. And I think specializing too early it burns kids out. That's where some they give up the game. And that'll come into play when I ask you about advice. I always ask at the end about advice you give people, but it's a common theme when I talk to people, whether I'm talking to Antonovich or Mike Randolph or whoever it is I've interviewed. They always say, it's a small town too. Yeah, because otherwise the sports wouldn't have a team.
And we're all left current from international
Yeah.
football where they were small.
Yeah.
Antonovich is from Packnight, Rain, that's small. So that's why we're probably in the city state. And some of the guys I knew from Minneapolis played football and baseball, and for now, I think they specialize in hockey a lot.
Yeah, and that's a sign of the times when you talk about the dollar and communities are losing people. In Minneapolis and St. Paul, there's one team in each community. And you even see like You know, you mentioned that triple overtime. I don't know if that was Apple Valley back in the day, you did, but Apple Valley and Burnsville, they're all combined. I mean, those are two big communities.
Right.
You're just seeing it more and more in all small towns. That when I talked with Ruben and Bob yesterday, the other day, there was teams that had teams that don't not even you wouldn't think of it. Like Granite Falls had hockey team back in the day. They're no longer around, and it is what it is. It is more of a how should I put it? There's not as many blue collar families that are able to take to the game because and that's why I do what I do to try to help with sticks and that. But
Well, I've noticed in the state of Minnesota, there's more teams. There's the southern part of the state has got teams now where they never had before. And there's a lot of, schools you got to look up because they're combinations.
yeah,
They don't use their names from the communities that are involved. They have something else, and it's hard to know who the heck they are. But there is a lot of hockey in the state, and it's still strong, and it will stay strong. Even if the good players move on, it gives other kids a chance to play too, which is fine.
you know, there's always going to be there's always going to be that next one. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of just off topic again, but you know, speaking of state tournament, you see these silliness now that they got going with this. Well, I can't say it because I don't have any hair, but you ever seen the hockey here thing? What do you think back in the day if somebody skated up to the street, what would happen?
I still got to play.
We could do it.
You know, I'm getting older, and I still get more set in my ways, and I go, I just want to look.
It's a popularity thing now.
Yeah, and it makes them an individual. Good for them, you know.
Joke because I have hair envy when I see that, and I know that guy. He interviewed me when we did our little documentary down there in Winona. It's a good guy that does the everything production full tap sports. But it's kind of funny. It's nationally known now. It's another thing I guess that puts the state of Minnesota State hockey on the map when people see it on ESPN. You know,
Right.
It's kind of funny, but. Yeah, so you know, is there any other stories or anything else? You know, I just kind of like to run through some different things, bring up some memories of playing high school and college, and you know that you want to bring up that.
Well, coming on the Legion about 10 o'clock tonight, and I don't know what thank you for
Is that where I gotta have? I gotta have my phone or recording it.
I can't make that late anymore.
Yeah, I'm kind of at that point too. You know, I kind of shut her down a lot earlier. I'm not like I used to be. I'm not getting raccoonized ripped by the boy.
Oh,
Yeah, but well, you know, I'm just under an hour here, but I wanted to leave it with this. We'll do this. I always ask people, no matter who I've interviewed, you know, if I was a young guy, a young gal, it doesn't matter, and I want to have aspirations of playing at the next level. That could be, you know, junior, college, or maybe minor pro. You know, depends on how good they are. What advice would you give a young athlete if they came up to you tomorrow and say, "Mr. Smedsmo, what do you think I could do to get myself better, to get to that next level?" What would you tell them?
well, you're only going to go as far as you want to work at it. And I mean, be dedicated, work hard at it, and just do everything you can to make yourself better. Don't give up. There's a lot of guys that are playing pro right now, making big money that never got drafted.
Yep. Agreed.
Started out in the lower minors,
I agree.
and they stayed at it. They developed on a niche. You don't have to be a goal scorer. You can win face-offs. You can be a defensive defenseman. There's a place for everybody. You just got to find that niche and then perfect it, work it, and they'll find a place for you.
Prime example is the goaltender across the border here in Winnipeg. We talk about Connor Hellebuck. But yeah, if you, for those of you that are hockey aficionados and like to search backgrounds, look him up because I think he played at AAA, whatever it be, and then he couldn't make he played in NA, and then he went to I think he was HL and now whatever, college, got a college scholarship, and now the best, I think. So that says, that's persistence, and kept moving up and up and up. So that's exactly it. I mean, it's just a common theme I get when I talk to everybody. Work hard, love the game. If you have a passion for it, do the best you can. And if that's a fourth line, be the best fourth liner there is out there.
Right.
Once it doesn't become fun, that's what bothers me the most. Mo, I don't know if you see it. I see it a lot because when you referee, but when I used to umpire too, there's what I call the helicopter parents out there, and living vicariously through little Johnny and little Susie. I hate that more than anything, and I got to bite my tongue as an official.
I mean, if parents should enjoy. Your son's a third liner. Enjoy the time he gets when he plays. If he's a stud, don't go. Just enjoy it. And the thing is, the kids feel the pressure. They want to produce on the ice, and they don't want to come home. They want to come home to a friendly atmosphere and whatever. They don't want to be tormented. It makes it tougher for them, and it puts more pressure on. It's supposed to be fun.
Prime example, like I said, you with Dustin helping him out. I mean, I'm sure there's times you might be a little critical with him, but
No.
you never. I mean, that's the thing.
No, I never was one guy said he had coaches for that. You know, I never bragged him up, but I never downplayed him neither. I would text him if he had a good game and say nice goal or something like that. He would call me if he was down or something, and then I'd talk to him. But others, it isn't the way to do it. It just is.
You know, you pushing the kids, and when you push the more you push them away. And the love of the game is gone, and that's why I wanted to, ask you on that. So, yeah, we're just under an hour here, and I really appreciate you taking it. By the way, it took us a while to get this together.
Yeah.
This goes back about a year, and I finally able to pin him down here. Probably right. So that's why we have to do it face to face here, and I'm learning to do it face to face. But I got my mic here. Hopefully, the sounds
Some
good.
damn things scare me.
So you're saying when you were interviewed in the past, you didn't like that?
I didn't ever.
Okay, well, I'm not Don Cherry here, so but that's a whole different topic. Let's use it. No hockey night in Canada. He should still be so up there now. But yeah, we don't want to get done with that. But
It's a good one there.
But anyhow, no, I appreciate it, Smo. Thank you very much. And I bring back memories when I was a little kid watching you playing at the Leafs and playing against you in fast pitch. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk and put this up probably sometime when I get back. So we'll send you the link. And if you want to listen to yourself, listen to us, Gavin. I know after the fact you're going to be like, I'm like Columbo. I'm like, but that'll be after the mic's gone and we're all done. So we'll save that. We'll save that for the Legion later tonight. How about that, folks? I'll tell you those stories another time. So, Small, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. That was Dale Smedsmo, Roseau. Thanks for his time. So you guys enjoy. Thank you very much. So long, everybody.